Hello, bro dude, this is Brody aka Bro, and welcome back to the finale of the Avatar series review, where we will be looking at Book 3. It's been quite the journey, but we're finally here. So far, each season has gotten better and better, but the standard has been set quite high. Could Book 3 meet these standards? Well, we're about to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to every episode of Avatar The Last Airbender, Book 3 Reviewed. Buckle in, it's a long one. And we're kicking things off with Chapter 1, The Awakening. Aang awakens from his coma. Zuko returns home. We return to Avatar after the biggest break in the show's history. So to open this next season, there's big expectations. Does it deliver? Let's find out. We start with Aang waking up, alive but severely injured after Azula's attack. And with hair. He wakes up on a Fire Nation ship, which was a nice way of tricking us into thinking he'd been caught. We then come to Zuko, who worries how things will go when he returns. And oh snap, Zuko and Mai are in a relationship. I really like this relationship because of what it signifies for Zuko. Although I don't like that it's what we end the show with, but I'll get to that in a bit. I like that his relationship with Mai is sort of toxic because it signifies the lowest point of his life. Getting back to Aang, he runs into the rest of Team Avatar, who tell him they captured the ship and are currently disguised as Fire Nation fleet. Back to Zuko, he returns to the Fire Nation to a huge ovation. Team Avatar explained the plan to Aang, and we see Katara angry at her father, although we don't know why yet. Sokka tells Aang that the whole world thinks he's dead. They run into another Fire Nation ship, but the other ship realizes not Fire Nation and a battle takes place. We come to Zuko feeding the ducks, and once Azula comes, the ducks run. It was a moment that lasted only a few seconds, but it was just fantastic attention to detail. Azula talks to Zuko and realizes that the Avatar could still be alive. Coming back to the battle, we see how desperate Aang is to fight. He hates not being able to help, which is a recurring theme throughout the episode. Katara and Aang talk, where Aang explains that he doesn't want other people to risk their lives to fix his mistake. I love how there's many reasons why he doesn't like this new plan, and all of them are deeply rooted within his character. He says he needs to redeem himself, and that he needs his honor back. When he says that, it immediately fades to Zuko in a similar shot, pointing out their similarities once again. This is yet another subtle moment that adds to this episode so much. Zuko finally comes face to face with his father. Meanwhile, Aang runs away. We finally get our first look at Fire Lord Ozai as he welcomes Zuko home. Katara vents to her father about Aang leaving, but she's also talking about when he left. This is another parallel within the episode that hits so hard. It's my highlight of the episode. You can just hear the hurt in Katara's voice. Her voice actor did such an incredible job. Ozai tells Zuko that he's proud of Zuko for killing the Avatar, and we learn that Azula told him this. Zuko asks Azula why she did this. Azula claims she has no ulterior motive, but it of course is another brilliant plan. She doesn't have anything to gain, but Zuko has it all to lose. Coming back to Aang, he's struggling to make it on his own, but he talks to Roku, then Princess Yue, who both give him the hope he needs to continue. He barely makes it to shore. When he wakes up, Team Avatar are there to welcome him back. Aang finally agrees to the plan, and he puts his glider into the volcano, in an excellent symbolic moment. So, did the start of Book 3 deliver? Absolutely, yes it did. As a matter of fact, for me, it's one of the most underrated episodes of the show. So many great moments, and a lot of clever parallels. I also like that it gives equal time to Team Avatar and Zuko's stories, cutting between them frequently. It's a great way to come back to the show, and I rate it a 9 out of 10. Chapter 2, The Headband. Aang, disguised as a Fire Nation kid, enrolls in a Fire Nation school. We start with Team Avatar, finding some new Fire Nation disguises. I really like how these look. Aang trying to fit in as Fire Nation is so funny. Hotman. Absolutely fantastic. Aang gets enrolled in a Fire Nation school after being caught wearing one of their uniforms. A lot of this is just some fun filler, but it's really the best kind. This episode just puts a smile on my face. It's so incredibly fun. Aang hangs out with some kids after school. He comes back to Team Avatar and explains what happened. He convinces them that they should save the school because he's getting information about the Fire Nation. Then he utters the classic line, Flameo Hotman. Man, this really is one of the funniest Avatar episodes. We come to Zuko trying to confront Iroh in his prison cell. Iroh won't even look at him and it drives him insane. Coming back to Aang, we get some more Fire Nation school antics. They tell Aang he must bring his parents to discuss his behavior. We have Sokka and Katara dressing and calling themselves Wang Fire and Sapphire Fire. Sokka is having way too much fun with this. We come to Zuko and Mai smooching. Azula interrupts and tells Zuko that she knows about his meeting with Iroh. She seemingly is actually looking out for him here, interestingly enough. Returning to Team Avatar, even when they return to the cave, Sokka continues to be Wang Fire. Aang tells him that he wants to stay because he finally gets to be a normal kid for once. He then throws the kids a secret dance party, and this is super fun. I'll give this the highlight of the episode. It's silly, but it's just super fun. Zuko once again tries to talk to Iroh, with Iroh not reciprocating. Zuko is losing his mind because he has everything he's ever wanted, but he's still not happy. We return to Katara and Aang, who go ham. Their dance is super fun, and there's definitely some romantic tension. The dance party gets found out, but the kids help Aang, and he manages to escape. Katara kisses Aang, and oh snap! Zuko then hires this big guy to kill the Avatar. This was a super fun episode. It was filler, sure, but the best kind. It was all around a good time, and I rate it an 8.25 out of 10. Chapter 3, The Painted Lady. Team Avatar come to a starving village, where Katara feels the need to help them. I'm kind of conflicted about this episode. On one hand, it's a good episode for Katara's character development, but on the other hand, man, this episode is pretty dull and boring. Of course, the highlight of the episode will be Katara's development, with the best part coming when she says that she'll never turn her back on the people that need her. With that being said, there isn't much else to know in this episode. The scene with Aang chasing Katara was fun, the ending speech was nice, and the end with the real Pan Lady talking to Katara was decent. But I don't know, the majority of this episode is pretty dull, and even the good parts aren't great. I can't call it bad, so I'll give it a 6.75 out of 10. I'm a huge fan of this one, and not great for Avatar standards, but overall it's not terrible. Chapter 4, Sokka's Master. Sokka feels like he isn't contributing to the team enough, so he seeks his sword master to teach him. This is one of the very few Sokka episodes in the show, and the only one that focuses him to this extent. And I think it's great. It's both the love letter to Sokka's character, seen by the team being lost without him, and great character development for him, as he learns his value. They also had to walk a fine line of making it Sokka doesn't believe in himself, and not that Sokka is incompetent, and I think they did it perfectly, having Sokka be the only one that doesn't believe in himself, with everyone else in Team Avatar telling him he's a very valuable asset to the team. In this episode, all of Sokka's strengths are pointed out. His planning skills, his humor, his wit, and his creativity. All of these traits are shown off in his fight with Piandao. I also really enjoyed the part where he returns to see how much he's been missed. Honestly, my highlight of the episode is Sokka getting his respect, which kind of encompasses most of the episode, but still. Also of note in the episode is Iroh in the prison cell, who is getting stronger and stronger. Overall, this is a great episode. It was super fun, and coming from a big Sokka fan, it was great to see him get some respect. Overall, very solid. I rate this an 8.5 out of 10. Chapter 5, The Beach. Zuko, Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee visit Ember Island. This is an episode where you either love it or you hate it, and spoilers, I absolutely love it. It's by far the funniest episode of the show, but it has more to offer than just comedy. When they arrive, Azula immediately knocks over a kid's sandcastle, classic Azula. We start to see the first of all the boys gravitating towards Ty Lee. Zuko tries to be a good boyfriend, and it's incredible. He drops the ice cream on Mai. Azula then gets to play volleyball. The fact that Azula is taking this so seriously is hilarious, but when you dig deeper, it's actually pretty depressing. The "you'll never rise from the ashes of your shame and humiliation" is a fantastic line, but it also shows how because of their upbringing, she's completely incapable of interacting with other teenagers like a normal person. You see that a lot throughout this episode, where there will be something hilarious, but digging deeper, it has a lot more depressing implication. After the volleyball game, they get invited to a party, and they come. A lot of great things come from this party. Firstly, the classic line from Azula about Han's sharp outfit. This is legit one of the funniest lines in the show. With that being said, it shows more of Azula not being able to integrate properly into a normal teenager environment. We then see the first time, perhaps in the entire show, where momentarily, Azula opens up. She admits her jealousy of Ty Lee to her. Ty Lee tries to give her advice, and Azula attempts her best normal person laugh. We come to Zuko and Mai, where we can see how toxic the relationship is. Zuko is very passionate, so he develops a lot of jealousy, but Mai is so void of emotions that she doesn't really do anything to calm his worries. We come back to Azula, where she almost acts like a normal person until she tells the boy that they will be the most powerful couple in the entire Fire Nation. Mai and Zuko have a big argument, and they end up breaking up. Zuko ends up coming to his old childhood home and looks at an old family photo. Azula finds him there, and in a moment of seeming genuineness, Azula brings him down to the beach, where Mai and Ty Lee also are. We then get the best part of the episode, where we really dive deep into each of these characters. You could argue some of it is a bit on the nose, but that's a minor complaint for what was a fantastic scene. We talk about why Ty Lee joined the circus, to differentiate herself, why Mai is so void of emotion due to her strict childhood, and of course we have Zuko. He has some great lines. I love the line about not being able to care about his bad skin because his scar. And after that comes my favorite part of the episode. Zuko explains how he has everything he's ever wanted, but he's still not happy. They ask him who he's angry at. You can hear the confusion, pain, and anger in his voice when he yells, "I'm angry at myself." It's one of my favorite lines in the entire show. He explains how he's confused and doesn't know what's right and wrong anymore. Azula afterwards claps at the quote-unquote performance, however, actually opens up for a moment about their mother before quickly shutting down again. And to end the episode, everyone shows up and wrecks the party. This whole episode is outstanding. It's so incredibly funny, but behind the laughs are deep and meaningful characters, each of which is dived into this episode. This may be surprising to some, but for me, this is an easy 10 out of 10. Just outstanding on all fronts. You can call it filler, but it's filler in the way that Zuko alone is, in that it has some of the best character development in any episode of the show. Chapter 6, The Avatar and the Fire Lord. Zuko and Aang learn the tragic tale of Sozin and Roku. I'm just gonna say it. This is the most underrated episode of Avatar. It's absolutely incredible. It's Book 3's The Storm, and it's equally amazing. It tells the tale of Roku and Sozin. We learn that they used to be best friends, and we find out slowly how that friendship falls apart. I love this episode because it has so many of those eureka moments that make you understand the whole show better. The tale itself, without the implications of it, is great too, though. You can see how genuine Roku and Sozin's friendship really was, and how it came to a bitter end, with the tragedy at the end of Sozin leaving Roku to die. It really helps us understand both Roku and Sozin, two characters which we knew very little about beforehand. It's especially interesting for Roku, as we've seen him very often throughout the show, but we know little about his backstory. I also really like how the story was told as well. Like The Storm, it's told from the perspective of both the main characters of the stories, Roku telling Aang through avatar powers and Zuko through a written scroll. Speaking of them, I really like the parallels between Roku and Sozin and Aang and Zuko, as it adds just another level to this excellent story. The story also gives so much context to how the war began. It's so interesting to see this small story play out that has such huge implications for the entire show. This also does something that Avatar does very well, which is giving the villain sympathy. Not unlike The Storm, we can see how Sozin was originally well-intentioned, but how power changed him. I also like the cool small details, such as Roku knowing Monk Gyatso when he was a kid, and of course after the story's finished, we have my highlight of the episode, where Zuko goes to Iroh asking for answers. Iroh tells him that Roku is also his great-grandfather. Wow, what a revelation. It's an absolutely brilliant plot twist. It explains perfectly why Zuko has this inner turmoil within himself, two sides conflicting with one another. This also ties in with Aang saying how anyone has the ability to be good or evil, which is a great way to wrap up the episode, bringing together the parallels of their stories. This episode is absolutely brilliant, and I don't know why it isn't talked about more. It's absolutely on par with The Storm. It's a similar concept, and he pulls it off equally, if not better, than The Storm. With all this being said, I'm giving this episode a 10 out of 10. Pretty insane that we have two 10s in a row. If you've watched my past Avatar videos, you'll know I don't give 10s out lightly, so the fact that we already have 2 in the season is truly incredible. With that being said, if you don't remember this episode being that great, go ahead and rewatch it. I barely even remembered this episode after my first watch, but now it's one of my favorites. Definitely worth a rewatch. Chapter 7, The Runaway. Toph starts scamming people for money. Katara doesn't approve of this, which leads to conflict between the two. This is a pretty good episode. It gets overshadowed considering the 2 episodes that came before it, but it's overall quite good. Getting into the episode, I like how the intro subverts your expectations, with Toph and Katara actually teaming up in the end. Toph scams one of the scammers in town, using her blindness and earthbending to her advantage. Katara is somewhat upset at this, but it gets escalated when they start scamming innocent people. At this point in the episode, we get some of the interaction between Toph and Katara, which is the best part of the episode. I've already said before that I enjoy how these two play off each other, and this is the best example of it. We dive into how Toph has issues with Katara because she's very motherly, and Toph hates authority due to her parents, but we also see that Katara was forced into this motherly role due to the death of her mother at an early age, leaving her to look after everyone. This is seen even further in Sokka and Toph's talk, which is my highlight, where Sokka says that since he was so young when their mother died, he doesn't remember what she looks like, and when he thinks of her, he sees Katara's face. After Katara overhears this conversation, she decides to help Toph in a scam. This then gets them in hot water, though, as Combustion Man comes. Katara uses sweat bending, which was a very clever development of water bending. They narrowly escape, and afterwards, Toph asks Katara to help her write a letter to her parents. It was a nice way to close out the episode, and it was some nice development for Toph, as she's learned to get help from her friends. This episode was great development for Toph, Katara, and their relationship. Overall, very solid. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Chapter 8, The Puppet Master. Team Avatar stay in an eerie town. While there, they meet Hama, who teaches Katara some advanced waterbending techniques. I love the eerie vibe of this episode. It sets it apart from the other episodes very quickly. I also like how the creepiness builds slowly. They meet Hama, and although Sokka gets strange vibes from her, she starts out relatively normal. Katara is very excited to meet her, as she's the only other waterbender from the Southern Water Tribe. Hama offers to teach her everything she knows. Of course, Katara accepts, as she starts to teach her. It starts at normal, where she shows Katara that water can be taken out of thin air. It gets a little more sketchy though, as Hama takes the water out of a flower garden. Nothing crazy cruel, but her killing all those flowers is hinting at something more sinister. That's hinted at even further when the rest of Team Avatar learn about the people who have gone missing, with one person telling them that they were being controlled and couldn't move their limbs. Katara and Hama come out during the full moon. Katara learns about Hama's tragic backstory. Hama is sort of a representation of Katara's dark side, I think. What Katara could become if she goes down a bad path. Hama's backstory is similar to Katara's in many ways, and if Katara isn't careful, she could turn into someone like Hama, which is why she's so against what Hama now teaches her, bloodbending. While this is happening, the rest of Team Avatar discover Hama is the one that had been taking people during full moons. They rush to make their way there. A fight between Katara and Hama begins. It's a great fight as we see two master waterbenders head to head, and of course we see bloodbending. I love how bloodbending is introduced here. It's a natural development of waterbending, but also doesn't make waterbenders unbeatable, as they would only be able to use it with a full moon. And I love Katara's more conflict with bloodbending. Soon, Sokka and Aang come to help, but they're useless against bloodbending. Although Katara didn't want the power, she was forced to use it against Hama to save Aang and Sokka. However, this is exactly what Hama wanted, as she congratulates Katara for being a bloodbender. Katara falls to the ground crying. This is an incredible episode. There's a lot to love here. Hama's backstory, Katara's moral dilemma, bloodbending, and the overall eerie vibe this episode gives off. I'll give the highlight to the concept of bloodbending, though, as it's introduced perfectly here. While this episode's not quite a 10 for me, it's pretty damn close, and I'll give it a 9.75 out of 10. Chapter 9, Nightmares and Daydreams. Aang feels anxious about how close they are to the invasion. The rest of Team Avatar try to help him. This one's a tough one to rate. On one hand, while its goofiness can be kind of charming and funny, it goes over the top with it, and it sort of feels out of place in the Avatar universe. On the other hand, it's good to get a more silly episode before the big battle episodes, as it helps create a diverse tone that keeps the show interesting. However, this is arguably too big of a gap in tone to the next episode. Aang's daydreams are too ridiculous to be fitting in the Avatar world. It seems very out of place and strange, like it's not meant to be in this show. His nightmares are better, even if only by a little bit, as we get some nice references to classic animes. If this was all the episode was, I'd probably feel the same way about it that I did with Avatar Day. However, there's a few things bring this up for me. Firstly is the reason that Aang's getting these nightmares at all, him being anxious for the falling battle. It does something I think Avatar does very well, which is gives battles character-based stakes. A lot of fights in shows are less enticing as Avatars, even though they're bigger budget, and that's because we don't care about the characters in the fight. Here, we know exactly what Aang has been going through leading up to this fight. It really just adds another layer of importance to this battle coming up. The other part of the episode that I thought was good, and my highlight, is what Zuko did. He learns of a war meeting that's going on, similar to the one he spoke out in as a child. Of course, he's very anxious about this, wondering why he isn't invited. It turns out he is invited, and when he goes there, he's the perfect prince. He does everything his father wants of him and doesn't speak out like last time. However, when he's finally done this, what he wished he'd done for years, he realizes it isn't himself. It takes him finally getting what he's wanted for years to realize he shouldn't be going down this path. It's a beautiful way to finally set him on a new path without it being forced. Overall, this episode is all over the place, and it has great and not so great elements. I'd say the good definitely outweighs the bad, but it's certainly not the best Avatar episode. I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. Chapter 10, The Day of Black Sun, Part 1, The Invasion. The day of the eclipse is here, and the invasion force prepares for attack. We're finally here. The invasion is about to start. The whole show has been leading up to this, and the day has finally arrived. Tons of old characters arrived for the invasion. Sokka and Katara's dad, Bato, Haru, the Swamp People, the Hippo, the Boulder, the Inventor and his kid from the Northern Air Temple, and the Pipsqueak and the Boulder. This just adds even more to this huge episode and makes even the background fight scenes feel more important, with the characters that we care about. The Inventor gives Aang a new glider, and Sokka prepares a speech about the attack plan. He finally is becoming the leader that he's always wanted to be, but when he's up there in front of everyone, he gets nervous and can't deliver the speech, and his father has to do it for him. Sokka talks to Aang about his insecurities about not being able to be a good leader, and Aang tells him that that isn't going to be his defining moment. His defining moment will be out on the battlefield. We then get Aang shaving his hair, as well as everyone getting into their battle armor, which all looks very visually appealing. It's essentially just bigger, more expanded versions of their normal outfits. Even Appa gets some awesome armor. The invasion force is almost ready, as Aang says his goodbyes to the rest of Team Avatar. He talks to Katara, where he asks what will happen if he doesn't come back. Before she can respond, he kisses her and glides off. I must say, this feels much more natural than most of their romantic interactions in the show. Moving on, the invasion force manages to make their way in, and the battle begins. It feels epic while still being character-driven and personal. It's an excellent fight, and there's a lot of clever and interesting parts of it. Everyone on the invasion force gets their moment. It's my highlight of the episode. We see Zuko throughout the episode, seemingly preparing for something. He talks to a picture of his mom, saying how he's going to set things right, despite his bad choices. Coming back to battle, Sokka and Katara's dad gets severely injured, and is unable to continue to lead the force. Sokka says that he will lead the force, and this is finally his moment. He gets to step up as the leader. Aang makes his way to the Fire Lord's palace, but when he gets there, nobody's there. And that's how Part 1 ends. Part 2 and 1 are essentially the same episode, so it's hard to rate them separately, but everything that went on in this episode is fantastic. I'll leave overall thoughts of the episode for the end of Part 2, but this was excellent. 9.75 out of 10. Chapter 11. The Day of Black Sun Part 2. The Eclipse. The eclipse starts and Team Avatar only have a small amount of time to find and defeat Ozai. Zuko meets with his father during the eclipse and tells him the truth. The action picks right back up as we're placed into a huge battle. Aang returns to tell the news that Ozai wasn't there. They decide to try to find an underground bunker that Ozai could be hiding in. Toph uses her earthbending to find a bunker trapped in a volcano. They make their way through this volcano and finally reach the bunker. Meanwhile, the warriors are making their way forward as Katara and Sokka's father pushes forward with them. The rest of Team Avatar arrive at the bunker, but they find out that it was a trap by Azula, as they've known about the invasion for months. Zuko, meanwhile, comes to speak to his father, as the eclipse begins. At this point in the episode, it splits into 3 parts. Azula, Toph, Aang, and Sokka, Zuko and Ozai, and the general battle scenes. The battle scenes in this episode are still great, as they show the scale of battle, and help break up the pace, with the other 2 parts of the episode being more emotionally charged. The Azula scenes were great too. Even though she didn't have her bending, she was able to evade Team Avatar's attacks and use her intelligence to bait them into wasting their time. Team Avatar eventually realizes this and walks off. However, Azula mentions Suki to Sokka, which brings him back. This is perfect for Azula, as she emotionally manipulates Sokka and manages to stall for more time. Of course, now we must talk about the most important part of the episode. Zuko finally confronts Ozai. He first tells him that the Avatar is still alive. Ozai tells him to leave, but Zuko tells him that he's no longer taking orders from him anymore. Ozai tries to intimidate Zuko, but Zuko isn't going to let it happen this time. He tells Ozai how horrible the things he's done to him are, as well as how horrible the Fire Nation is, creating an air of fear. He says this needs to be replaced with an air of peace and kindness. Ozai laughs as he says that his uncle's gotten into him. Zuko replies, yes he has. He then tells Ozai that he's going to join the Avatar, and begins to leave, but is lured back in when Ozai tells him to stick around to hear what happened to his mother. He explains that she risked her life to save Zuko, and that she was banished, so she could still be alive. Then the eclipse ends, and Ozai shoots lightning at Zuko, but Zuko manages to redirect it and run off. What a scene. Seriously, this is one of, if not the best scenes in the show. This is what we've been waiting for Zuko to do since the beginning of the show, and it's finally happened. It's quite possibly the most cathartic moment in the entire show. There's still more for Zuko's journey, but to see him finally become good, and for real this time, with no way of turning back, just feels so incredible. This is already a great episode, but this boosted it up so much. It's easily the highlight of the episode, and maybe the entire show. After all this occurred, Team Avatar and the rest of the warriors attempt to evacuate, but the submarines are destroyed. The adult warriors stay behind and surrender, while Team Avatar, plus the inventor's son, the Duke, and Haru escape on Appa. They head to the Western Air Temple, having yet again lost a major battle. However, there's a glimpse of hope, as Zuko follows Team Avatar, not to capture them, but to finally join them. What an episode. In a lot of ways, this episode is quite similar to the Crossroads of Destiny. An incredibly important moment in Zuko's journey, an epic battle, and a huge episode where Team Avatar don't come out on top. But that being said, I'd say I prefer this to that episode, as I think the pacing was better and Azula's scenes added to the episode, and Zuko's big moment was more impactful. I'd overall rate this episode a 9.75 out of 10. I don't really have any reason for it not hitting 10, as it certainly has enough great stuff in it to be there, but it's just not quite there for me. Nonetheless, an incredible episode deserving of its extremely high rating. Chapter 12, The Western Air Temple. Zuko hopes to finally join Team Avatar. This is it. This is the big episode that we've been leading up to. All of Zuko's struggles and hardships throughout Book 1 and 2 come to a climax here, where he finally tries to become good and join Team Avatar. Let's see how it works out for him. We start off with Team Avatar arriving at the Western Air Temple, humiliated and ashamed after the great defeat. I have to say, the Western Air Temple is a very cool and interesting location. Zuko also arrives at the temple and flashes back to when he was there years ago, after being banished. You can see he was even more angry then. Zuko sees Team Avatar coming and runs off. Team Avatar talk about the new plan, which is basically the same as the original plan, to master all the elements before the comet arrives. Aang says that won't even be possible since he doesn't have a firebending teacher. We also get a reference to Zhong here, which is nice. Come back to Zuko, who's practicing what he's going to say to Team Avatar. We can see how awkward he is, which makes sense, as we've seen this side of him in episodes like The Beach and the Tales of Ba Sing Se. You could argue this is a bit too goofy, and I would agree with that to an extent, but it's forgiven for being so funny. It's genuinely one of the funniest parts of the show. I also think his impersonations of Iroh and Azula are great. We come back to Team Avatar, who are quickly joined by Zuko. We get the "Hello Zuko" here line, which is an absolute classic. The scene that follows is really funny, but is also really endearing and makes you root for Zuko even more. You can see how genuine he is about this, but also it makes perfect sense that Team Avatar don't trust him. Zuko makes a reference to the time that Aang said that they could be friends in the Blue Spirit, which is a nice touch. Even after that, though, Aang tells him that they could never trust him, and that he needs to leave. This is a really strong moment for Aang. He's very compassionate, but that has limits, and he won't put his friends in harm's way, even if he's conflicted. Coming to Team Avatar again, they're all in agreement not to trust Zuko, but are still confused about why he did that. They bring up what happened in the Crossroads of Destiny and the Blue Spirit. I really like how they're referencing so many other episodes in this one, considering how much of their decisions about Zuko are based entirely on what he's done in the past. We see that Toph is the only one that's more forgiving of Zuko, which makes sense because she wasn't there for most of what he's done to them. She then tries to come where Zuko is sleeping, as she wants to talk to him. Zuko didn't see it was her and accidentally burns her. He then drops the "Why am I so bad at being good" line, yet another classic. Toph comes back and tells him what happened, which reinforces their beliefs. After this, we see Combustion Man, who yet again starts attacking Team Avatar. Zuko orders him to stop and threatens not to pay him. This doesn't stop him, though, as he continues the attack. I like this because it adds to the mystery of Combustion Man and how we don't even know his reasons for attacking. With the help of Zuko, Combustion Man is defeated and, well, dies, which is kind of crazy. Zuko once again confronts Team Avatar, this time explaining himself much better. Aang is the first person to accept him, which makes sense. It wasn't easy, but he was convinced. Toph was easily convinced as well. Sokka was still hesitant, but went with Aang. And then we get to Katara. She allows it because Aang needs a teacher, but looks very upset about it. Zuko is happy he's finally accepted into the group. Sokka talks to him, and you can see how weird it's going to be for a while, which I like. Zuko yet again reminisces about the day after his banishment, this time happy that he's finally able to accept his uncle's advice. Katara walks in and talks to him. She said that he may have everyone else fooled, but she knows the real him. She threatens to end his life if he makes even one mistake or slip-up, or anything that hurts Aang in any way. And the episode ends. I love this. For one, I'm so glad that he wasn't immediately accepted. Him still not being fully accepted to join Team Avatar is my highlight. He needs to prove himself to every member first. They knew how important this was. They dedicate 4 of the 5 final episodes before the finale to him being accepted into the group. I also love that they chose Katara to be the one in the group to not forgive him. He's wronged her on a more personal level than anyone else in the group. Plus, it's a core part of Katara that, while she cares for people, if her trust is abused, it's extremely hard to forgive. We also saw that with Jet. This is an all-around incredible episode, and despite the tiny nitpick of it being ever so slightly too goofy at times, this episode is fantastic and it works on so many levels. I'm rating this one a 9.75 out of 10. Chapter 13, The Firebending Masters. Zuko and Aang journey to find the original source of firebending. This is the first full episode with Zuko and Team Avatar, so that's what we start off with. Zuko is teaching Aang firebending for the first time, but starts to get frustrated when his firebending is much weaker. I like that Zuko is still getting easily frustrated, as it shows that his character didn't just immediately shift. We come back to the rest of Team Avatar, where Zuko tells him that his firebending for some reason has weakened. We see here that Katara still absolutely hates him, which I'm glad they kept up with, so that a future episode is more impactful. They conclude that Zuko's fire is weaker because it was being fueled by rage before. Zuko doesn't want to use rage to firebend, so he needs a different source. Toph explains that he needs to find the original source. For earthbending, it was badger moles, and that's how Toph was taught earthbending. I really like this. It's some great world building, and is a good explanation of earthbending's origin, which is what the rest of the episode is for firebending. Zuko explains that the dragons were the original source of firebending, but they're now extinct. He decides that they should go to the old Sun Warrior civilization and see if there's anything that could help them. So Zuko and Aang venture off. I gotta say, I really like how Zuko and Aang bounce off each other. It's a surprisingly good combo and makes for some really fun scenes. Zuko explains how the dragons became extinct through them being hunted for sport, and the final one being killed by Iroh. Zuko and Aang find the statues of the dancing dragon. They perform the dance and it opens a pedestal with a gem on it. Zuko picks it up and some sort of goop fills up the room. They barely escape and meet the ancient Sun Warrior civilization, thought to be gone. They tell Aang and Zuko that they have to prove themselves to the Masters. They carry a small part of the original fire to the Masters. However, right before they meet the Masters, Aang's fire dies out. Aang tries to get some of Zuko's, but puts his out as well. The Masters come, and it turns out they're dragons, somehow still alive after all these years. Aang and Zuko decide to do the dancing dragon, and it turns out well for them, as they are judged to be good. What follows is an absolutely beautiful scene, with the dragons breathing out multiple colors of fire. It's one of my favorite scenes in the show. They come to the realization that Iroh didn't actually kill them, he protected them, and that's why two are still alive to this day, because the dragons deemed him worthy. Aang and Zuko talk about what they learned about firebending. They learned that fire isn't supposed to be about destruction, but about life. Zuko realizes this as well, and that his firebending, as well as the rest of the Fire Nation's firebending, is coming from the completely wrong source. Zuko regains his firebending ability, while Aang firebends for the first time. They come back and show the rest of Team Avatar the dance. Team Avatar teased Zuko about it, but this time more playfully, showing that he's starting to be accepted into the team. This was a really fun episode. It had a lot of great jokes, Zuko and Aang bounced off each other well, and this is the first in a series of episodes where Zuko goes out and proves himself to a member of Team Avatar, which is an arc that I really love. My highlight of the episode, though, has to be how it fleshes out firebending, showing it's more than just a tool for destruction. This is really the first episode that we see that in since The Deserter, and Bitter Work to an extent. This is a great episode. I rate it a 9.25 out of 10. Chapter 14, The Boiling Rock, Part 1. Sokka and Zuko journey to the Boiling Rock, a prison where Sokka believes his dad could be. The next episode in the Zuko field trip arc, and up this time, Sokka. Let's see if he can follow up from the previous episode. We start off with Zuko making tea, and poorly retelling a joke that his uncle told. It's nice to see that Iroh lives on with him in small ways. Sokka then pulls Zuko aside to ask him where the Fire Nation could have taken his dad. Zuko tells him where and asks what he's planning. Sokka tells him nothing. Sokka then tries to sneak out later in the night, only to be caught by Zuko. He tells him that he needs to regain his honor. Zuko, understanding that, helps him on his mission. They journey out on Zuko's war balloon. I really enjoyed their awkward conversation out there. It's very funny, but it also develops their relationship well, which the rest of the episode does very well. We then get the absolute classic line of, "My girlfriend turned to the moon," and "That's rough, buddy." I don't care, that's my highlight and my quote of the episode. It's just too good. They finally make it to the Boiling Rock where the war balloon is destroyed. Sokka admits that he had a feeling this would happen. Zuko explains how he should have thought things through, which is a recurring theme throughout the episode. Zuko and Sokka find guard outfits to disguise themselves. They get split up and Zuko finds out some information about where the war criminals could be. Meanwhile, Sokka watches as one of the prisoners are held in the freezer. The warden tells him he'd rather jump into the boiling lake himself than let anyone escape. A bit of foreshadowing for later in the episode. Zuko and Sokka meet back up, where Zuko confirms that Sokka's dad isn't there. Sokka seems down, so Zuko tries to give some advice that Iroh would give, leading to a funny scene. While this didn't help Sokka, he gets another idea, as he sees Suki as one of the prisoners. Sokka and Suki reunite in her prison cell in a very sweet scene. Zuko gets found out, and the warden makes him his special prisoner. As well as this, we find out that the warden is Mei's uncle. Sokka, Zuko, and Suki meet. Sokka says that they haven't met before, but Suki corrects him, bringing up that Zuko burned down her village. In response, Zuko says, "Oh yeah, sorry about that." This was a really funny interaction. Moving on, Sokka discusses his plan for the escape, using the cooler. One of the prisoners over here and joins in on the escape. Zuko uses firebending, so he'll be locked in the cooler. Sokka checks in on Zuko, and the plan is going well, as Zuko has extracted the bolts from the cooler. Sokka then overhears that new people are being added to the prison, including some war criminals. Sokka is conflicted on if he should risk their freedom on a slim chance that his father is there. Sokka originally decides to leave because he's afraid of failing again, but his friends are able to convince him to stay. Suki and Zuko stay as well. Sokka waits and waits as more and more prisoners come, and he loses more hope. The last prisoner comes out, and finally, it's his dad. And that's where part 1 ends. This first part is clearly more of a setup for part 2, but it succeeds at that, while still managing to be fun in its own right. It has a lot of really funny jokes, and I think making it a 2-part episode really adds to the epicness. Although that definitely helps the second part more than the first. Nonetheless, this is still a very fun episode. I rated it a 9.5 out of 10. Chapter 15, The Boiling Rock Part 2. Sokka reunites with his father, and them, Zuko, and Suki create a new escape plan. However, things get complicated when Azula shows up. Part 2 starts off with Hakoda and the other prisoners getting a talk from the warden. In this we can see how stubborn Sokka's father is, as he steps up and speaks out against the warden. After this, Sokka and his father reunite in the prison cell, in a very wholesome scene. Sokka explained to him who's on their side, and they start forming a plan. Some of the prison guards take Zuko to a new cell where he finds May waiting. Meanwhile, the warden gets Chit Sang to talk, reveals that one prison guard helped him to escape. We come back to Zuko and May, where May tells him how upset she is that she only received a letter when he left, which is fair, but Zuko didn't really have a choice. Sokka then explains the plan to Suki, which is to start a prison riot, then escape on the gondola with a captive. Suki explains how they'll just cut the line, but Sokka says that they'll be using the warden as a captive. Sokka then gets taken to a line of guards, which Chit Sang chooses the person he helped escape from. However, he decides not to rat him out and chooses someone else. Trouble then starts brewing, though, as Azula arrives at the prison. Sokka tricks one of the guards into letting the prison out. Hakoda tries to start a prison riot by pushing a huge guy, but just gets greeted by, "Hey, that hurts my feelings," which is an incredibly underrated line. What's even better is what comes next, as Chit Sang grabs some guy, lifts him up in the air, and yells, "Riot," as a riot starts. Zuko regrettably has to leave May in the prison cell in order to escape. Sokka says he's unsure how to capture the prison guard, which Zuko points out he should have thought ahead. Adding to Sokka's theme of the episode. Luckily for them, Suki does some really cool warrior stuff and captures the warden. It seems as if their plan is working, as they have the warden and they escape on the gondola. However, Ty Lee and Azula show up, and that causes trouble. They make their way on the gondola, and the fight begins. This is a great and unique fight, taking advantage of the gondola, especially with Suki and Ty Lee. Zuko and Sokka against Azula is fun too, as they try not to fall off the gondola. The warden gets the cloth from his mouth and tells them to cut the line, even knowing that he won't survive, which shows the great lengths he'll go to so that no one ever escapes. This is also foreshadowed in the first part of the Boiling Arc, where he says he'd sooner jump in the boiling lake himself than let the Record of Zero escape. The guards then start cutting the line. Ty Lee and Azula are able to escape, but the rest are not. It seems as if it's over then, but in comes May to shockingly save the day. May attacks the prison guards, preventing them from cutting the line. Azula then confronts May. She asks her why she's done this. May tells her that she doesn't know people as well as she thinks she does, and that she's miscalculated. She then delivers the classic line, "I love Zuko more than I fear you." This was incredible, and the highlight of the episode. This right here is what starts Azula's downfall and descent into madness. This is what Azula has. She's a people person. She knows every move that people will make. But if she does wrong, then what does she have? She doesn't have friendship either. She rules with fear, and if May doesn't fear her, what does she have? That's why Azula delivers her next line, the "No, you miscalculated, you should have feared me more," with anger, instead of her normal, cold, and calculated self. She then tries to attack May, but Ty Lee Chi blocks her, finally standing up for herself, and making Azula descend even further. After this, Zuko, Sokka, and everyone else in the group travel back to the Western Air Temple on Azula's ship. Katara reunites with her father, Suki joins Team Avatar, and Chit Sang is there. This episode is built so perfectly off the first part. Stuff with May, Azula, and Ty Lee was absolutely brilliant. Great stuff, and all around, I give this one a 9.75. Just barely missing the 10 mark, but incredible nonetheless. Chapter 16, The Sylvan Raiders. Zuko, hoping to heal his relationship with Katara, journeys out with her so she can find the man who killed her mother and finally get closure. The final installment in the Zuko field trip journey. Let's see how it stacks up. The episode starts off with a bang, as Team Avatar is immediately attacked. We found out this attack is directed by Azula. During this, we get a bit of a glimpse of a more unhinged Azula. Zuko and her have quite the battle on top of the blimp, with some fast-paced firebending strikes. As soon as it starts, however, it's quickly over, as both of them get blasted off the blimp. Luckily for Zuko, Appa's there to catch him. Azula is not so lucky though, and for a moment it looks like it will be the end of her, but she quickly creates jets and she survives. We come to Team Avatar, camping again like old times, but of course with the addition of Zuko and Suki. Team Avatar thanks Zuko and cheers him lightheartedly. However, Katara isn't so keen of this, as she tells him he doesn't deserve this and storms off. Zuko comes up to her and tries to talk to her, asking her why she is the only one not to trust him. Katara points out that she was the first to trust him, referring to their time in the Crossroads of Destiny together, and how he abused that trust. Zuko asks her what she wants him to do, and she emotionally tells him to bring her mother back. And obviously, Zuko has nothing to do with the death of her mother, but Zuko's face is the one she puts to that action, not even seeing who her mother's killer was, and knowing things that Zuko has done in the past. Then we come to a scene that implies that Suki and Sokka were about to, do it, which, what? Where did that come from? That was really out of place and weird. But anyway, Zuko talks to Sokka about what he can do to help Katara, and he asks him about their mother, connecting the dots that Katara's anger about that is being directed at him. Sokka recalls the day of their mother's death, giving the crucial detail that it was the Southern Raiders that raided their tribe. Zuko then goes to Katara, telling her he knows who killed her mother. They decide to go out on a trip and find the man. However, when Aang learns about this, he protested, saying it's about revenge more than closure. And in a way, he's right. He's also dealt with the pain and loss, arguably more than Katara has, and is giving the more mature solution to the situation, knowing from past experience. However, Katara won't listen to this, as she's blinded by her hatred. Zuko journeys out with her because he knows what she's going through in a different way that Aang does. In an equally strong way as well. Sokka agrees with Aang in this case, despite it being his mother as well. And Katara delivers the line, "Then you didn't love her the way I did." And man, did this hit hard. This is Katara at her lowest. This is her turning to a dark place. The one I discussed in the Puppet Master. And this is just the start of it. So despite Aang's warnings, Katara and Zuko journey off. Aang gives the advice to not let revenge take hold of her, and to then forgive the man. This is the one flaw in Aang's thinking, but I'll get to that in a bit. In the meantime, Zuko and Katara make it to a Fire Navy communication tower to find the information about the Southern Raiders. Katara talks to Zuko about how she isn't the helpless girl that she was when they came, perhaps insinuating that she feels guilt that she didn't do anything. We then get to another flashback, this time from Katara's perspective. We then see how her mom was taken before her dad could save her. Then they see the flag of the Southern Raiders on a ship. They blast through and find the captain of the ship. Katara, with absolutely no hesitation, starts bloodbending the man. The action that, once she learned from Hama, bursted into tears. That bloodbending. This is it. This is Katara at her absolute low. This is her momentarily turning into what Hama wanted her to be. While doing this, she stares the man in the eyes, but realizes it's not him. She doesn't exactly remember the man's face, but she knows that that isn't it. The man tells him that the man they're looking for is likely Yan Ra, who retired 4 years ago. We cut to this man, currently living with his mother. A man so pathetic that when confronted, he would give up his own mother just to spare his own life. Zuko and Katara come after him, and Katara tells him to remember her like his life depends on it. We get one final flashback as we see Katara's mother sacrifice her life to save Katara. Katara reveals this to the man, saying how she was the last waterbender. She freezes the rain in the air into icicles, ready to attack the man. In this moment, Katara has the full intention of killing this man. However, she lets go. She can't bring herself to do it. This is my highlight. When they return to Team Avatar, Aang is glad that she didn't kill him. He's glad that she was able to forgive him. However, Katara didn't forgive him. She was strong enough to not take his life, but she was far from forgiveness. This is the flaw in Aang's thinking. She didn't forgive the man, and she didn't have to. That step isn't necessary, but she was able to do the right thing nonetheless. And despite not being able to forgive that man that killed her mother, she's able to forgive Zuko now. Zuko was able to help her get closure, and not revenge. But not only that, she now has a face to put that action that shaped her life all those years ago to. That defining moment in Katara's life, and that trauma, is no longer linked with Zuko, making her able to forgive him, as Katara and Zuko share a hug. Aang and Zuko then talk. Zuko says that Aang was right, and that violence wasn't the answer. However, he asks him one simple question. What is Aang going to do when he faces Ozai? To which Aang does not have an answer. Wow, what an episode. I'm going to think this is one of my most disliked episodes on first watch. I'm not even entirely sure why. Avatar is definitely willing to get dark in its themes, but this is probably the darkest and most adult episode of the show. and it's absolutely amazing for that. They really decided to not go the easy route, and boy did it pay off. I'm not sure what else to say other than this has to be a 10 out of 10. Absolutely incredible stuff from front to back, especially in the second half. P.S. Can we talk about how amazing this little Zuko field trip arc was? And how it ascended from 9.25, 9.5, 9.75, and then 10? This really is just an incredible stretch of episodes. But it doesn't stop here, as we continue with Chapter 17, The Ember Island Players. Team Avatar watch a play about their journey. We're finished with the Zuko field trip arc, unfortunately with no Toph trip, but we're on to the final episode before Sozin's comment. We start out seeing Zuko training Aang, and Aang is very clearly improving his firebending skills. Sokka returns with a poster for a play called The Boy and the Iceberg, which follows their journeys. So they end up going to the play, and this play is fantastic. This is a recap episode, but it does it in such an interesting and fun way, while adding to the story. There's of course the comedy, which is a lot of the writers making fun of themselves, and a lot of fan service. They reference everyone's hate for the Great Divide, they reference how unclear Jet's death was, and they even bring up fandom ships with Zutara. And just generally, this is one of the funniest episodes of the entire show. I also like how the play portrays a lot of the characters' insecurities. Aang feels insecure about his masculinity after being portrayed by a woman. Sokka's comedic side is played well, but it makes it out to be all that he is, and making him really dumb. Katara is portrayed as being overly dramatic and giving speeches about hope all the time. Then there's Toph, who's portrayed as a buff guy, which she loves. Which is also a reference to what she was originally going to be in the show. And of course there's Zuko. Zuko is hurt by his betrayal, not because it's inaccurate, but because it's too accurate. He has to relive his biggest mistakes, the worst of which being betraying his uncle. Intermission comes and everyone splits off. Zuko and Toph have a talk where Zuko talks about him regretting betraying his uncle. Toph tells him that his uncle just wanted him to find his own path, and now that he's with Team Avatar, he would be proud. We then come to Suki, sneaking Sokka backstage. Sokka finds his actor and talks to him, giving him some lines. The actor finds them pretty funny and uses them on stage. Then there's Katara and Aang. Aang asks Katara if she has feelings for him or not, after being insecure after watching the play, with him being a woman and Zuko and Katara kissing. She says she doesn't know, since bigger things are happening right now. Aang kisses her, but she tells him again that she doesn't know, and goes back to the play. The play starts again, and we pass what has already happened. Aang confronts the Fire Lord, but it's too late. Sozin's comet arrived, and Aang is easily defeated. I really like this, because it confronts Team Avatar with a frightening possibility. And they're confronted with the fact that there are so many rooting for their demise, as the audience roars with eruption at this result. They leave the play very dissatisfied, and the episode ends. What a great way to lead into the finale. This episode was like the beach, but for Team Avatar. I say that because it's one of the funniest episodes of the show, while also getting into what makes the characters what they are, and playing into their insecurities. I also like the aspect of the play being Fire Nation propaganda, with the play's end making sense, but also being unexpected. I'll give that my highlight. I don't think this is quite up to the standard of the beach, but it's very close. I rate this one 9.75. And now it's time to discuss the finale of the show, starting with Chapter 18, Sozin's Comet Part 1, The Phoenix King. Aang learns of Ozai's plans to burn down the Earth Kingdom. Aang disappears mysteriously. Here we are, the first of 4 parts to the finale of Avatar. The episode starts with Zuko training Aang, and we can see he's training him very hard, since he's going to need to fight Ozai soon. Everyone else is just lounging around, so Zuko takes action, and starts coming after Aang. Everyone is confused to why Zuko's doing this, but Zuko explains that they have very little time. They say that they've decided to wait after the comet, since Aang isn't ready, and the Fire Nation has practically already won the war. Unfortunately, Zuko tells them that during the war meeting, he found out the Fire Nation is planning on destroying all of the Earth Kingdom, similar to what Sozin did to the Air Nomads. They're all feeling down on their luck, but it just takes a good speech to bring it all together. Then they all share a group hug, which kind of feels like a final moment of peace before the battle. We then come to Zuko teaching Aang how to redirect lightning. It's nice to see Zuko taking what Iroh taught him. We then get a scene with all the Team Avatar training, and of course we get Toph's classic Melon Lord line. Then Aang goes after the fake Fire Lord, but stops in his tracks as he didn't feel right about it. He's now starting to realize that he doesn't know what he's going to do when the time comes to fight the real Fire Lord, as his monks have taught him to be a pacifist. He starts to flip out on the rest of Team Avatar, saying they don't know how big a deal this is to him. Aang storms off, and then goes to sleep. However, during his rest, he feels a presence from a nearby island, and is brought there in his sleep. When the rest of Team Avatar wake up, they search for him, but he's nowhere to be found. They split up trying to find Aang. Toph goes with Zuko, and Toph goes with Zuko to have their life-changing field trip. Unfortunately, no one can find Aang, even after relentless searching. They all look to Zuko to find Aang, since he's kind of an expert at that. We then come to Ozai, and Azula joins him. She asks if he's ready for their departure, but he says that there's been a change in plans, and that Azula is going to stay at the palace. Azula starts to freak out, yelling that he can't treat her like Zuko. Ozai calms her worries by saying that he can only entrust the safety of the homeland to her. I really like that we see another glimpse at Azula going mad before she returns to normal as her father gives her approval. Ozai then says that Azula will become the new Fire Lord. He's making her the Fire Lord because Ozai will become the world leader, entitled the Phoenix King. We come back to Team Avatar as they're at a tavern. Zuko has brought them here because of June, the bounty hunter from Season 1. June was a cool character, and it was nice to see her back in the finale. We come back to Aang, now waking up on this island, and the episode ends. A nice way to end it too, with 2 cliffhangers, that being June and Aang on the island. With all that being said, what a way to start the finale. It admittedly feels very setup-y, but it's the best setup episode the show has had. It feels like one last time just to see the characters' interactions in a calmer environment, which is great because it's a greatly important part of the show. It also sets a lot of things into place. We find out Ozai's plan, we see that Aang is going to be on this island, and we see that June is going to be important. And we enforce that Aang does not want to kill the Fire Lord. This is a very information dump type of episode, but it benefits from being a part of a bigger series of episodes. I'll rate this one a 9 out of 10. This was a great episode, but it gets better with Chapter 19, Sozin's Comet Part 2, The Old Masters. Team Avatar, minus Aang, find Iroh with June's help. Aang asks multiple past avatars what he should do in his fight against Ozai. The episode kicks off right where it left off. Team Avatar, minus the Avatar, talk to June. June uses Aang's staff on her monster thing, but he can't detect him anywhere. June says that means he doesn't exist. We come to Aang, who thinks he's in the spirit world, but he has Bending, and Momo's with him. We come back to June, who doesn't have any explanation for what could have happened to Aang. Zuko has another idea, though, as he gets Iroh's flip-flop that he's for some reason kept to track him instead. June's beast takes him to Ba Sing Se, and June leaves. We come back to Aang, still confused where he is. He decides to channel Roku, who tells him he has access to all former avatars if he looks deep within himself. Aang asks him what he needs to do fighting Ozai. Roku talks about how Sozin took advantage of his indecisiveness. He tells him that no matter what, he must be decisive. I like this because it goes against Airbender philosophy of finding some way around the problem. He must make a clear decision. Coming back to Team Avatar, and they run into Bumi, Pakku, Piandao, and Zhang. Pakku tells Katara and Sokka about how him and their Gran got back together, which is kind of weird. Like, Gran specifically ran away to get away from him, right? I don't know, it just seems kind of strange. We learn that they're part of the White Lotus, a group that transcends the nations. This is a really cool group. A bunch of people from different nations coming together despite their differences to bring peace to the world. It's also just good to see a lot of these characters again. They say they are known as the White Lotus, which is cool because it has been brought up all throughout the show with Iroh, and has been hinted at with subtle details in episodes like Sokka's Master. They tell them they're looking for Iroh, so they take them to him. We come back to Aang, who now asks Kyoshi for her wisdom. She talks about how she took out Chin the Conqueror. Aang says how he died because of his own stubbornness, and Kyoshi didn't directly kill him. Kyoshi says that she doesn't really see the difference, and assures that she would have taken him out. Kyoshi tells Aang that only justice will bring peace. This reinforces that Aang must take out the Fire Lord. No matter how it happens, he will be responsible for his death. We come back to Team Avatar and the White Lotus. They ask Bumi when he escaped, and he says that it was during the eclipse, and he explains how he took back Omashu during that time. We come back to Aang, who looks deep within himself and summons Avatar Korok. He talks about how he was more of a go-with-the-flow type of avatar. This costed him when he lost the person he loved to Ko, the Face Stealer, which is a really cool detail, by the way, and a reference to Ko's line in Season 1. Korok says that if he was more active and attentive, he could have stopped him. He tells Aang that he must actively shape his own destiny, and the destiny of the world. This reinforces Kyoshi and Roku's points that he must take this head on. We come back to Team Avatar, and Zuko comes to Iroh's tent. Zuko is nervous to go in, but he finally is brave enough to do it. He steps inside, but Iroh is sleeping. He sits there and waits for him to wake up, which is something Zuko does surprisingly often. We come back to Aang, who wishes there was an avatar who understood him. He decides that his best bet is to channel an air nomad avatar, and channels Yang Chen. He tells Yang Chen that the monks taught him all life was sacred, and Yang Chen agrees with him. Aang says that he has always avoided using violence in conflict and only fights in self-defense. Yang Chen is sympathetic to Aang and tells him that the monks taught him well. However, she also says that this isn't about Aang, this is about the world. Aang says that the monks told him he has to detach himself from the world so his spirit could be free. Yang Chen explains that the Avatar can never detach themselves from the world, because their duty is to the world. That's very interesting that she said that, as it directly opposes what Guru Patik was trying to teach Aang. I kind of like this, though, as it shows that there can be multiple philosophies that even the smartest people have. Yang Chen tells Aang that selfless duty calls him to sacrifice his own spiritual needs to do whatever it takes to protect the world. This is even further enforcement, this time practically downright saying that he has to kill Ozai. She tells him bluntly that he needs to directly go against his beliefs to save the world. Aang realizes that he has no choice. We come back to Zuko in the morning, and Iroh finally wakes up. Zuko, coming to tears, explains how sorry he is for everything he's done, but before he can go on, Iroh pulls him in and hugs him tightly. Zuko is shocked, saying how he thought he'd be furious with him. Iroh says he was never mad at him, just sad that he had lost his way. This is such a beautiful moment. This is a culmination of all of what Zuko has done. It's one of my favorite moments in the entire show, maybe my favorite. It's so simple, but it's exactly what was needed in this moment, and so fitting for Iroh. God, this is just such a beautiful moment. It's easily the highlight. Iroh tells Zuko how proud he is of him for finally finding his way. Go back to Aang. He sees that the island he's on is moving. He's concerned by this and tries to swim away. He realizes that it's an animal. We come to Team Avatar and Iroh, where Zuko explains to Iroh that he's the only one other than the Avatar that could defeat the Fire Lord, and that he should face him. Iroh explains that even if he could, it would be the wrong way to end the war, as history would just see it as another brother killing a brother for power. The only peaceful way to end the war is for the Avatar to defeat the Fire Lord. Zuko asks if Iroh will then take his place on the throne, but Iroh also declines this, saying that Zuko is the man for the job. Zuko, although hesitant due to all of his past mistakes, accepts this duty. Iroh explains that he always thought he would take Ba Sing Se, but now he realizes he must take it back for the Earth Kingdom, and that's why he's gathered the White Lotus. He explains to Zuko that he's going to need to face Azula for the throne, but he can't do it alone. Zuko chooses Katara to come with him. This is a great choice, as it shows how much their bond has grown, to the point that she's his first choice to take with him. Sokka, Toph, and Suki decide they will go do everything they can to take out the airship fleet. I really love this talk in the episode. It basically does what the previous episode did in an even better way, and only did it at the end of the episode. So a lot of other stuff took place during the rest of it. This really sets things at a high gear as Team Avatar journey out to their final battles. They did a fantastic job of making this feel like an incredibly epic battle before it even begins. We finally return to Aang. He sees that the so-called island is a lion turtle. Aang asks him if he can help him. The lion turtle gives him a speech and does something unclear to him, but seemingly giving him some sort of spiritual energy. We later find out that this was energy bending, but we'll get to that when it comes. The lion turtle tells Aang to wait, as Ozai will find him. Sozin's comet finally arrives as Aang looks on. What a dang episode. There's so much good packed in this one. There's Aang talking to the past avatars, which enforce that he has no choice but to take Ozai's life, as well as giving us a glimpse at some of the lesser known avatars. There's Team Avatar talking to June, which is a cool comeback. There's the White Lotus, which is multiple cool comebacks, as well as being an awesome group with really interesting motives. There's Iroh and Zuko reuniting, which is one of the best moments in the entire show. There's a final conversation that put everything into place for the final battle. There's no other rating I can give for this other than a 10. Incredible episode all the way through. But it doesn't stop here. We continue with Chapter 20. Sozin's Comet Part 3, Into the Inferno. Battle ensues as Team Avatar and the White Lotus take on Ozai, Azula, and the Fire Nation army. The episode starts off with a shot of the comet arriving. We come to Azula, and she's being attended to. One woman brings her cherries. She eats one and notices there's a pit still in it, despite asking for the pits to be removed. She completely overreacts, thinks she could have choked, banishing the person that left it in. This is a real start of Azula's downward spiral. She thinks that everyone making even the most minor mistakes is trying to sabotage her. This started with May and Ty Lee abandoning her, but now she doesn't even have her father's approval, which she's been leaning on her entire life. Her worldview is questioned. With that being said, despite how irrational she's being, she isn't acting crazy. She's still calm. So far. We then come back to Toph, Suki, and Sokka, who come to the airship fleet and barely make it on as they're departing. We get a huge shot of the fleet, giving a huge sense of scale. We see Ozai in front, totally decked out. Come back to Azula with the Dai Li. She said they took minutes to get there. Minutes in which an assassin could have come and taken her. She banishes the Dai Li. This is her going down an even more downward spiral, with her becoming more and more irrational, believing everyone she knows will betray her. And this time, the banishment has bigger consequences, as the Dai Li are rather important soldiers. We come back to the fleet, where Sokka, Suki, and Toph manage to take out the people leading one of the ships in a really fun action scene. They take control of the ship, and Sokka tells the crew to go to the bomb bay and immediately to celebrate her birthday. The crew are confused, but take their orders. There's a really funny scene with the cruise ship having an incredibly mundane conversation for the high stakes of the episode. Once everyone had arrived, they get dropped into the water, and now the ship is completely empty except for Sokka, Suki, and Toph. We return to Azula, where Lo and Lee say they're concerned about her well-being. Azula claims that her father sent them because he doesn't think she can handle herself. This is now her creating conspiracies against herself, now that she doesn't have her father's approval. Lo and or Lee suggest that they postpone the coronation. She asks if one said that, to which neither say. Azula says only one way to settle this, for them to duel in Agni Kai. They point out that they are not firebenders, so Azula chooses one at random to be banished. This banishment wasn't as high stakes as the Dai Li, but it was even more irrational than the others, with her now starting to develop conspiracies in her own mind and starting to act more out of touch with reality. We then come to the White Lotus, who are here to reconquer Ba Sing Se in the name of the Earth Kingdom. This is an absolutely epic battle, especially with Iroh and Zhang, as we can see how powerful they are with a comet. We return to Azula, who's trying to do her hair, but it's not coming together. She angrily cuts her bangs that refuse to do as she desires. She sees her mother in the mirror, where she says that's a shame, she always had such beautiful hair. Azula starts talking to this figment of her imagination, asking why she's here. Her mother tells her she didn't want to miss her own daughter's coronation. Azula says she thinks she's a monster, but her mother says she thinks she's confused, saying how she's used fear to control people. Azula says that's the only reliable way, saying that even her mother fears her. Her mother says that she doesn't fear her, and that she loves her. Azula throws her brush at the mirror, shattering the glass. This was the breaking point for Azula. Everyone had turned her back on her, but she still knew one thing, that her mother feared and hated her. But when her mother says that she loves her, her view of the world collapses. She's always ruled by fear, and that her mother says she loves her, her view of the world is entirely broken. She's supposed to be a people person, reading people like a book, but at this point she realizes she's been wrong about everything, as her mother's position in her life has completely shifted. This is an amazing scene, with so much to read into. It's easily the highlight. We now come to Ozai, far ahead of Sokka, Suki, and Toph, as they realize they're not going to catch up to him in time. We see how powerful Ozai is in this moment, and then we see Aang, just one kid, taking on this huge force of nature. It's such a beautiful shot, one of the best in the show. Aang, using earth and firebending, take out Ozai's ship, but Ozai jumps off and their fight finally begins. Ozai throws huge firebending strikes, but Aang is able to dodge and evade them. Sokka, Suki, and Toph focus on taking out the Fire Nation fleet before they can destroy Ba Sing Se. They use the ship they're on to tear through the rest of them. They get to the top of the ship, but Suki gets split from Toph and Sokka. We come to Azula, who's about to be crowned Fire Lord, but in comes Zuko, who challenges her. Azula challenges Zuko to an Agni Kai. Katara says that Zuko shouldn't accept this, as she clearly is just trying to split them up. But Zuko says he knows this, but he can tell that she's slipping and knows that he can take her. He accepts her challenge. The Agni Kai begins, and it isn't epic battle music that's been playing. The music feels more tragic. It shouldn't have come to this, but it has. We now switch back to Ozai and Aang. Ozai is on the offense, but Aang managed to evade him well. However, Ozai is slowly closing in on him, finally zapping him with lightning. Aang, just in time, manages to redirect it. However, as he's pointing it, he can't do it and points it to the sky instead of Ozai. Ozai takes advantage of this and yet again goes quickly to the offense. We come back to Zuko and Azula. The fight is incredible. The most beautifully animated fight I've seen in any show. So many shots that just look absolutely stunning and iconic, with beautifully tragic music playing in the background as well. And that's how I describe this fight. Beautifully tragic. It's clear that Zuko has the advantage in this fight, as he's at his strongest, and Azula's at her most vulnerable. Zuko even gets cocky, asking, "Where's the lightning today?" Azula furiously prepares for a lightning attack, but right before she throws it, she changes her direction to Katara, knowing that she can't outright beat Zuko, takes advantage of his love for his friend. Zuko just barely sees this in time and blocks the lightning, but isn't able to fully redirect it and is clearly very injured. This shows yet again how much Katara and Zuko's friendship has grown. We come to Aang and Ozai. Ozai is overwhelming Aang. He tells him that his people didn't deserve to live in this world, and he's about to join the rest of them. He says prepare to die, and the episode ends. It's hard to rate this episode separately from the next, as they're really one big episode. With that being said, what happened in this episode was amazing. It's definitely a 10 for me. It hits a 10 even without the payoffs of the next, episode because of Azula's incredible downward spiral, and of course the beautiful Agni Kai, which is my highlight. But now we finally move on to the final episode of the series. Chapter 21, Sozin's Comet Part 4, Avatar Aang. Aang and Ozai's fight continues. Sokka, Suki, and Toph take out the Fire Nation airship fleet, and Katara and Azula battle. We finally made it. From the boy in the iceberg to Avatar Aang, we're finally here. The end of this beautiful series. It starts out right where it left off, as Ozai is attacking Aang, and Sokka and Toph are taking down one of the ships. They get attacked and they're falling off the ship, but just barely manage to hold on, falling onto a lower platform. However, they're in a precarious position, as Toph is only holding on by Sokka's hand. They're surrounded by Fire Nation soldiers. In this small moment, Toph's entire world is Sokka, as her hand is slipping. Sokka says he thinks this is the end, with tears welling up in Toph's eyes. But just in time is Suki to save the day. We come back to Ozai and Aang, where Aang has trapped himself in a small earth ball. Ozai slowly breaks through it, pushing Aang back. However, he pushes Aang into a jagged rock, and one part of it goes into Aang's scar on his back, opening his final chakra. Ozai taunts him, but Aang grabs him by the beard and absolutely tosses him back. Now is also a good time to mention that there's a ton of incredible shots here that make Aang look so cool. Aang, now in the Avatar state, surrounds him in this ball with all the elements, which again looks so incredibly cool. I should talk about how I feel about the chakra opening on a random rock, as it's quite controversial. I personally don't mind it, as he doesn't even take him out with it, so it doesn't have that heavy consequences. We then come to Boomy, who has a really cool scene where he takes out the Fire Nation tanks. Iroh then has this really awesome shot where he burns down the Fire Nation flag. We then come to Zuko, who is alive but unable to get up. Katara tries to go check on him, but Azula starts attacking her. Katara avoids her attacks and notices there's some chain in a nearby water source. She goads Azula in and freezes both of them. There's a moment of silence before Katara unfreezes herself and ties up Azula. Katara comes to Zuko 8 and uses her healing to barely keep him alive. Then there's Azula, violently trying to escape, breathing fire, crying. It's a devastating scene. You know she had it coming, yet in a way feel bad for her as her life crumbles all in this moment. We return to Aang and Ozai's fight, where the tides have completely turned, with Aang in the Avatar state heavily on the offense. He finally catches Ozai and slams him down. He tells Ozai he'll now pay the ultimate price. He winds up a huge final blow, but right as he's about to hit him, he exits the Avatar state, saying that's not how he's going to end it. Ozai says that even with all the power in the world, he's still weak. He tries to attack Aang, but Aang traps him in the earth, then uses the same technique the Lion Turtle taught him. He energy bends Ozai. In a beautiful shot, both of their energies personified by their light, with Ozai taking over Aang's, until the very last moment, where Aang's energy overpowers his, successfully taking away his bending. That was yet another controversial part of the finale. Personally, I really like the concept of energy bending. It's a way for Aang to win without killing Ozai, showing there's always an alternative way of doing things. I really like how every single Avatar told him he needs to do it, but even on the advice of the most powerful people in the world of all time, he still stuck to his morals and found another way. The only problem I have is that it wasn't introduced earlier. Avatar is really good with introducing new concepts and making them make sense in the universe, but this one's explanation is okay at best. I can see how people feel it's a cop-out since it's introduced near the end of the show, even if that's not necessarily how I feel. I think overall it's a good concept that could have been expanded a bit better. Moving on though, Aang takes out the fires caused by the fights with waterbending. He stands tall as Momo joins him. Soon also joining him are Sokka, Suki, and Toph, who congratulate Aang. We come to Zuko, still clearly quite injured. Then May appears to help him. He's glad to see that May is okay, as she explains how she got out of the prison, and the kiss. I'm actually not sure how I feel about them getting back together in the end, although I believe it's confirmed in the comics that they don't stay together, so whatever. We see everyone gathered together, many injured, such as Sokka with a crutch. We see Toph reunite with their old Earth Kingdom friends, Sokka and Katara reunite with their father, and Suki back with the Kyoshi warriors, now with a new member, that being Tai Li. I like this because it shows that they really made sure every character got a resolution, but also because it's a little mini arc for Tai Li. She said on the beach that she went to the circus so that she wasn't part of a pack with her 6 identical sisters. But now she's confident enough in herself to join a group like the Kyoshi warriors. It was a nice little detail that I only noticed on rewatch. We then come to Aang and Zuko, reminiscing on what's happened throughout this year. They say how they're going to rebuild the world together, and then they share a hug. They come out to the Four Nations. Zuko gives a speech about how the world is broken from the war that lasted 100 years, but he hopes to bring an era of love and peace, which is also what he said to his father in the Day of Black Sun. It really seems that everything's perfectly tied up, no questions left unanswered. However, Zuko comes to his father's prison cell asking one simple question. Where is his mother? They tied up this story perfectly, but they wanted to leave just open one question. And if you want the answer, read the comics. We then come to our main group: Iroh, Appa, Momo, Zuko, Aang, Toph, Suki, Mai, Katara, and Sokka. Zuko is giving them tea, and Sokka is painting. We see Sokka's excellent painting of the moment, very true to life. Aang heads out to the balcony where he's joined by Katara. They share a kiss, and the episode, and the series, ends. 10 out of 10. It's such a flawless ending to the show. Everyone's stories are finished with a nice bow. It's just perfect in every way. It's hard to even pick a specific moment as a highlight. I'll give the highlight to how perfectly it wraps up the show, though. There's so much to say, but it's hard to put into words. It's just a beautiful ending to a beautiful show. And that was every episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 3, reviewed. What a journey. Of course, we aren't done, as we still have our ranking for each episode and final thoughts. We'll do the rankings first. From worst to best, the rankings are: 21, Nightmares and Daydreams. 20, The Painted Lady. 19, The Headband. 18, Sokka's Master. 17, The Runaway. 16, Sozin's Comet Part 1, The Phoenix King. 15, The Awakening. 14, The Firebending Masters. 13, The Boiling Rock. 12, The Day of Black Sun Part 1, The Invasion. 11, The Puppet Master. 10, The Day of Black Sun Part 2, The Eclipse. 9, The Ember Island Players. 8, The Western Air Temple. 7, The Boiling Rock Part 2. 6, The Avatar and the Fire Lord. 5, The Beach. 4, Sozin's Comet Part 4, Avatar Aang. 3, Sozin's Comet Part 3, Into the Inferno. 2, The Southern Raiders. And number 1, Sozin's Comet Part 2, The Old Masters. The average for the season is a 2.5, which is insane. Like, what an insane average. Now, I've compiled all the rankings for every episode of the series. I'll not read it out, but here it is. I'd like to point out that I've changed a few ratings from previous seasons. The changes I've made were changing Winter Solstice for Part 1 from a 6 to a 6.5, changing The Boy in the Iceberg from a 7 to a 7.5, changing The Waterbending Master from a 9 to a 9.5, changing The Return to Omashu from a 7.75 to a 7.25, changing Bitterwork from a 7.75 to an 8, changing The Great Divide from a 5.5 to a 4.75, and changing The Storm from a 9.5 to a 10. That's right, a new 10 is added. As well as that, the other 10s are The Siege of the North Part 2, The Avatar and the Fire Lord, The Beach, Sozin's Comet Parts 2, 3, and 4, The Southern Raiders, and my favorite episode of the entire show, Zuko Alone. I also calculated the average for the entire show, and it came out to an 8.54, which is fantastic for an average, but of course I think the show as a whole is a 10. Now let's move on to my final thoughts of the season. This season is nuts. Talk about consistency. The second half of the season didn't even sink below a 9, and the first half was no slouch either, picking up 2 10s. Speaking of, this season got 6 10s. That's insane. With an average rating of 9.25, this season was packed with incredible episodes. This for me has to be the best season. Every character got a chance to shine. Katara and the Puppet Master and the Southern Raiders, where she deals with her mother's death. Sokka and Sokka's Master, where Sokka doubts himself, but sees why he's such a valuable member to the team. Sokka also has the Day of Black Sun, where he gets to prove himself as a warrior. Toph and the Runaway, where she learns to accept help from others. Aang throughout the whole season, as he's faced with the responsibility of killing the Fire Lord. And of course, Zuko. Zuko's arc is incredible throughout the whole show, but I believe it's at its best here. Zuko on Team Avatar is probably my favorite thing in the entire show. It felt so natural, and him turning good felt so cathartic. He has some of the best moments in the entire show in this season. And it's hard to comment further on the season, honestly. I covered a lot in this very long review, so I think that does it for today. Overall, this show is truly something special, and I am late to the party, but I truly believe it's the greatest show of all time. That is all I have for you guys today. I finally finished reviewing Avatar, and it was a lot of work, but it was really fun to do. It's been quite a journey, but we've finally done it. These videos were definitely more work than my usual content, but I hope to do more like this soon. And if you're wondering, yes, I probably will do a video on Korra. It won't be really the style though, it'll probably be a more casual review, and I'll probably only do one video. But it will be reviewed. But that is all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Bro Dude, out.